Hello, everyone, and thanks for participating in the College of Engineering IT Service Desk New Hire Training. This will serve as your ServiceNow familiarization training video. We anticipate it'll take about an hour or so to do, and we hope to cover some of the topics that you'll need regarding your day-to-day use of ServiceNow, which is going to be our ticketing system that you'll spend the majority of your time in updating tickets, opening tickets, and resolving tickets. The first thing you're going to want to do is navigate to the URL that ServiceNow is located at, and that is up there in the address bar, ucdavis.service-now.com. And that will prompt you to log in with your CAS credentials, and then will take you to this homepage that you see here. It will load up. We'll talk about the ITIL homepage in a little bit as far as the dashboard and tweaking the filters that are displayed here. Each of these blocks is what is called a filter. And the ones that are located here, you're pretty much going to get rid of all of them and replace them with more appropriate ones. On the left-hand side, we have the application navigator, and this is the area that you will want to be familiar with. In particular, there are two that are going to be most important. The first is the incident application. You see here you have some choices. And then the other, which you won't use as much, but it's still important to be familiar with it, is the service desk application. So we'll get right into it as far as creating a ticket. The majority of the work that you're going to be doing at the service desk is working tickets that have already been created and assigned to a group. But for right now, we will start with creating a brand new ticket. We'll go to Incident and we'll click Create New. We can do some general familiarization with the application layout. First things first, we will want to focus on this top section here. This top section is what I like to call the contact card of the ticket. And there are two sort of types of fields. They are read-only and then write access. So the read-only ones you can see are grayed out here. They're automatically created when a ticket is opened, and that is the incident number, the time it's opened, the person that opened it, as well as the priority, which is grayed out. We'll talk about how that's populated. The little red stars here indicate that these fields are required in order to save or update the ticket. So we'll start first by, let's say that someone walks in and needs assistance. And for the purposes of this video, we'll say it's me. So you'll enter my name, Jason Fearing. There's three things to be mindful of here. You can see that it will search by my first and last name, my Kerberos login ID, or my mail ID. So if I don't know my name or the name of the person that you're chatting with, but you know the email address, you can still type that into this field and it will auto-resolve to that person. Once you've done that, it will automatically fill the department, and that is linked from my payroll. The next thing it will do is it will populate an email address for me, my primary email address. And then you'll also see some new icons over here. If you click my little eyeball icon, you get some additional information about me. I wouldn't get too hung up on this, as sometimes the information here is not entirely accurate. The important thing that you might want to check is the business phone. If they've emailed you and they say they have an email problem, well, you might have to call them. So that's where possibly you can find their telephone number. The other icon here, the exclamation point in the triangle, is to show related incidents. This will show other tickets that this person, where he or she is the caller, has opened recently, and perhaps maybe they might preface their inquiry with, well, I called last week, or I spoke with someone last week. Well, you could look up last week, the last week in October, and you might be able to cross-reference that ticket and what was done. So that is a possibility here. And to load that ticket, you would just click on the INC number, sort of the hyperlink of the ticket. The next field that we'll come across is requested for, and we'll circle back on this in a moment. Let's focus on this category and subcategory field. The category field is going to be the general explanation or identification of the problem. We have three choices here: request, service disruption, and general inquiry. A request is when someone wants something either new or they have something and they want it changed. A service disruption is where someone is reporting that the thing they have is not working. It's either not working at all, it's not working well, but in other words, it's not working. And the last is, it's pretty much neither of the first two. They don't need anything or they don't want anything. They don't have anything that's broken. They just have a general question, a general inquiry about a product, a service, function of something. Don't get too hung up on choosing the appropriate category. Make your best assessment of the ticket, but try to be familiar with the issue enough to know that whether it's a service disruption or a request. The reason for that is when I run reports on tickets, it's helpful to know what percentage of our tickets are one or the other. Once we choose a category, we then enable the subcategory field. The subcategory field changes based on the category that is selected. You will not see these four choices if I had selected service disruption. I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. We talked earlier about that a request is either you need something new, you want something changed, you already have it. Perhaps you need to know how to do something, or you have a feature request. I would like MATLAB to do X, Y, Z. Understand that not everything that someone wants we are able to accommodate, but it's important to try to address the category and subcategory as closely related to what the customer wants as possible. We circle back to service disruption. You'll see that we now have complete, partial, and performance degradation. Complete outage, it doesn't work at all. Partial outage, it works halfway. I expected to do X, Y, and Z, and it's only doing X and Y. Or performance degradation, I expected to do this, but in reality, it should take 2 minutes, and it's taking 3 minutes or 10 minutes. So those are some nuances between complete, partial, and performance degradation. Again, don't get too hung up on, well, I don't know which to select here. Use your best understanding of the issue and how it is phrased to you, and then choose the most appropriate based on the information you're presented. General inquiry does not have a subcategory. It will remain none. We'll leave it at general inquiry for the purposes of this discussion. The configuration item is the thing that is actually being reported. The configuration item table is a little funky in that, as you can see here, there are 501 choices. I don't expect anyone to remember even a tenth of them. However, because there are so many choices, it can be a little overwhelming. So you want to try to categorize the issue as best as possible. The way that this field works is it is a free text field, and as you begin to type, you will be able to try and sort of solve what it is. So if I type Office, it will try to resolve that I probably mean Microsoft Office. Here's the catch though. Just like as we read in English left to right, so too does this field. So if I had typed in Mac for Office, I don't know why I would do that, but let's just say I typed in Mac, but I meant to type in Office. You can see that it's not displayed here because MAC is only the first three letters in these two choices. If you go back to Office, you can see that while Mac is in the last two, it is not the first three letters. So what you can do with that is the asterisk key will allow you to do a wildcard. So if I do asterisk 2016, now it's going to show me any configuration item where 2016 are in sequential order anywhere in the word or phrase that is the configuration item. Office 2016, Office for Mac 2016, and Outlook 2016. 2016 is not the first four letters of either of those words, but it comes up. Worst case scenario, if you get hung up and you have no idea what the configuration item is, you can hit Z on your keyboard. The ZCIs were created many years ago to assist with this very problem. I don't know which of the 500 CIs I need to pick, but I need to fill in something because we know that it's a required field. By typing in Z, you'll be given several choices, and these are sort of general catch-alls. So theoretically, if you were trying to support someone with Office, it is considered a software and business application. You could select that to satisfy the requirements of this ticket. Circling back on the discussion of reporting, keep in mind that when I run a report and I'm looking for how many Office tickets did we get this week or this quarter, and I search by configuration item, your ticket will not be on my report. So I'll have to do some additional work to see if I can find your ticket. The next is assignment group. When you create a new ticket, that information is not filled out. There are a lot of assignment groups. You can see that there are many assignment groups. Our primary assignment group is COE, College of Engineering. Within the COE sort of umbrella, we have a variety of groups. And by variety of groups, a whole lot of groups. The important groups for you to be mindful of, and the ones that you will do the majority of your tickets, is the COE inbox, as well as the COE service desk. Those are the two. So the second and the last. And then within that, you'll see names, and some of these names will look familiar, and some of these names will not. You'll learn everybody's name the longer you work here. The COE inbox is our general catch-all group. Whenever a new ticket is added to the College of Engineering, it is placed within the COE inbox, and then we route it appropriately. The COE service desk is the group that once we decide to work on a ticket, that assignment group is where the ticket will reside. There are some other names here that probably look familiar to you. BAE, Biological and Agricultural Engineering. BME, Biomedical Engineering. CEE, Civil and Environmental Engineering. CHMS, Chemical Engineering and Material Sciences Engineering. The CS, Computer Science Group. The CWS team, Center for Watershed Sciences. The DO team, Dean's Office. The ECE, Electrical and Computer Engineering. INTS, Institute of Transportation Studies. MAE, Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering. Those acronyms are important to remember, as you'll frequently encounter them when discussing tickets, working on tickets, and sort of orienting yourself on campus. Don't get hung up on whether you remember all of these. There are other ones, as you can see, that I haven't talked about, but I primarily highlighted those as that is the majority of the groups that you will work with on a regular basis. Because we are in the service desk, we're going to own it under the service desk, and then we're going to assign it to ourselves. The next is a short description. A short description is a brief explanation or identification of what this ticket is about beyond the purposes of the configuration item. We talked earlier about that this was going to be an Office ticket, but maybe it's specifically related to Outlook. In this case, Outlook 2016. Well, what specifically is wrong with Outlook? Let's say that I can't display my mail signature when sending outbound emails. That gives us some additional information beyond the purposes of the configuration item on what specifically is wrong with this request, with this ticket, with this incident that we have in front of us. We'll go over to the right. The building and room number will identify where this person is located. Now, in this case, this information typically does not auto-populate. You would need to fill it in. Why that's important? Two reasons. The first is if you need to go on site and you put the building and room in here, that will be helpful for the purposes of trying to find the person. The second is that in the event we need to send this to a level 2 or a departmental IT person, they may look at that field to determine where is this person located. I would say just about all of the departmental IT staff know exactly who their people are, where they're located, their phone numbers, their email addresses. A lot of the staff we've had here has been here many years, and thus they know pretty much where everything is and who everyone is. The contact type. By default, when you create a new ticket, it is a phone ticket. Now, in this case, it's very possible that this person walked up to your desk where you're situated and asked you a question. Well, they didn't contact you via phone. They contacted you via walk-in. So you see here that there are 6 choices: chat, email, phone, self-service, walk-in, and service hub. Typically, you'll do phone, walk-in, or email. When someone sends in an email, that field is automatically populated with email. You will have to change it from phone to walk-in. The email to field is also another field that will be pre-populated on emailed tickets. If they send it to an email address, and each department has their own email address, that address will populate in there. The time worked field is pretty self-explanatory in that it counts in real time how long you've had this ticket open. It does not count how long you've been working on it. It's very possible that if you leave it open and walk away for 2 hours and you haven't worked on it in those past 2 hours, that this time worked field will be incorrectly identified for how much time was invested on this particular ticket. As a result, we do not currently use or manage the time worked field. If you want to fill it in, you're more than welcome to. You are under no obligation, nor do I run any reports on this field. The impact, urgency, and priority field are linked as a trio in terms of how they function. The impact has 3 values: high, medium, and low. The default of any new ticket is low, low. The impact can be defined as when there is a ticket placed, especially with regards to a request or a service disruption. How impactful is this problem? Is it a low level of impact? Perhaps it's one workstation. Is it a medium level of impact? Perhaps it's a room of machines. Is it a high impact? It is an entire building or an entire floor of machines. Sometimes when people want something done very quickly, they'll just set both to high and then expect staff to sort of jump through hoops to get stuff done. Keep in mind that if everything is urgent, then nothing is truly urgent. Please choose the appropriate field here. Typically, most impact issues, if they escalate too high, are usually as a result of critical work stoppages for a large sum of people. You can see that by setting the impact too high and the urgency too low, the priority field has now populated with the number 3 for moderate. Had I changed impact to medium, that will now change to a 4 of low. We'll set it back to high. For the purposes of impact, that is how critical it is for a quantity of people. The urgency of an issue is how quickly you need it done. Low urgency, whenever you get to it, hopefully soon, hopefully at some point. Medium urgency, I would appreciate it if you could do it by the end of the day or by the time you go to lunch or something. And high urgency. This needs to be done immediately. Drop everything, go over and help this person, and get it done. As we've adjusted the urgency, you've probably observed that the priority field has changed below it. A high of impact and urgency now generates a 1 critical for priority. If I were to lower one of these to medium, it would go to high instead of critical. So 1, 1, 1. The due date field is helpful to identify when someone wants something done in the future to help set a reminder. Keep in mind that ServiceNow does not send any sort of push notifications or email reminders or anything like that. I'll show you in a little bit why using the due date field is helpful. For the purposes of the due date field, there are two values that are important: the day in which it is due and the time in which it is due. And you can automatically fill that to whatever you would like. It is not 24-hour time, it is 12-hour time, and you will choose either AM or PM. So in this case, resolving this ticket is due by the 9th at 4 p.m. and that field is now populated. And that completes the sort of top bar of this field. The next is going to be the notes field, and this is where your work will be completed for a particular issue. There are two main components: the additional comments field, which, as you can see, says customer visible, and the work notes field. The work notes field is where you will enter information that is not visible to the customer. You can put notes about what was said, about what he or she said to you, any helpful anecdotal information, research, documentation, links, pretty much whatever you want into this ticket. The additional comments field, customer visible, is exactly that. Anything you put into the additional comments field when you save or update the ticket will automatically email that information from you to whoever is identified in the caller, requested for, or watch list field. We'll talk a little bit about those two other fields, requested for and watch list, in a moment. So keep that in mind. That is done instantly and the moment you hit save. It's as though you're composing an email to the customer. The watch list field. The watch list field operates a lot like a CC or carbon copy on an outbound email message. There are two choices that are available here. The first, the add me, clicking that will add you to the watch list. Any additional comments sent from the ticket will be also CC'd to you. You can remove yourself by clicking the padlock icon. The padlock icon will bring up the ability to edit the watch list. If I select my name here, you can see that the X button appears and I remove myself. I click the padlock again and now there's no one here. If I click that padlock icon a second time, I have two choices. The first is I can type in an email address, any email address that I want. ServiceNow does not do any validation or verification of email addresses, so it's critical that if you enter a non-UC Davis email address, that you verify it is spelt correctly, and that if there are any periods, underscores, or hyphens in the email address, that they are entered correctly. For the purposes of this ticket, we will enter a personal Gmail address of mine. I've entered that email address in, and I'll click the envelope icon. That will now add my name to the watch list. When I'm done, I'll click the padlock icon to secure that, and now my personal Gmail address will receive all outbound communications whenever something is entered into the additional comments field for this ticket. If I want to add a person, a UC Davis person, I would enter their name here. I will add a coworker of mine who might be a helpful resource if I want to send any correspondence. Just like with the caller field, I have the ability to enter either their UC Davis email address or their first and last name. This field will not resolve against the Kerberos login ID like the caller and requested for field does. When I enter that in, it will automatically add it to the watch list. I'll click the padlock icon and secure that. You'll notice here that while my email address for the Gmail address is listed, Dean Bunn's email address is not listed. That is because it finds him, identifies him, and the system is intelligent enough to know that it will send an email to Dean Bunn's official UC Davis email address. The same goes for the work notes list. If I click the add me icon, I'll add myself, and if I click the padlock, the cycle repeats from how the watch list operates. You would add someone to the work notes list if you want to communicate, ask advice, or any sort of information in the work notes list. Keep in mind that in order to ensure communication is sent via the work notes to whoever, and the additional comments, that you will need to add that individual to both the work notes list and the watch list. They operate independently from one another. It is not necessary to add anyone to the watch list or work notes list. However, it is sometimes helpful if you're going to hand the ticket off, or at the end of your shift, if you're curious how an incident is resolved, you may wish to add yourself to both the watch list and the work notes list. Again, that's not required, but it might be helpful if you're the type of person that wants closure on, hey, I spent 5 hours on this over a couple of days, and it turns out that someone else resolved it. What did they do to fix it? Once the ticket is ready to go, you can click Save. When you save the ticket, it sort of commits it to an official record. When the official record has been updated, we will momentarily see some additional information here. Let's circle back to the requested for field. We'll also talk about the caller supported by field. The requested for field operates similarly, if not identical, to the caller field. Whereas the caller might be the person who contacted you, you'll discover here at the university that oftentimes people call on behalf of other people. So you have a situation where I have called on behalf of my boss. My boss is the one with the actual problem. In this case, my boss, Steve Pigg, will be added into the requested for field. That's helpful because what happens is that any correspondence via the additional comments will also be sent to the requested for field when that information is entered. This way, you can keep myself, the guy doing all the work, perhaps on behalf of my boss, and my boss updated in one single email. The requested for field is not a required field. The supported by flag. You can see below my name and below my boss's name, there is a field that says supported by COE. Sometimes you'll see something that doesn't say COE. It may say another group. While this isn't as critical to the College of Engineering, the Central Campus Help Desk typically receives hundreds of incidents a month from people that they do not support. So that assisted in routing those people to teams like College of Engineering. So if someone from the College of Engineering were to contact the Central Campus Help Desk, this would assist in routing them over to the COE inbox for us to process the ticket. Let's reload or refresh this page. You won't want to use the browser to do that. You'll want to right-click in this upper bar and select Reload Form. It's asking us, are you sure? Because we've made changes by adding the requested for Steve to a ticket and we haven't saved it. That is perfectly fine for the purposes of our demo. So now you start to see some additional information in what is called the activity feed, or if you view this on your smartphone, the activity stream. The activity stream is a real-time sort of dossier on the incident. It was created at 4:02 p.m. today, November 4th. It was assigned to this assignment group, and Jason Fearing was the one that worked it. Well, at that same time, what also happened, about 16 seconds later, an email was sent to Jason. In that email, the following text was displayed. This is helpful because each time a ticket is open on behalf of an individual, this is sort of their transaction receipt. Their transaction receipt includes an INC number and the appropriate corresponding information, which, as you look up here, will match. In addition, it also includes a link to the Service Hub. The Service Hub is a web-based portal that a customer could go, log in with their Kerberos credentials, and see a status of the ticket. As more and more information is added to the work notes or additional comments, the activity stream will automatically populate. Now you can see that the work note I added, adding information for example, is now added to that activity stream, indicating a work note and a timestamp. There are also two buttons in the upper right-hand corner that might be mysterious to you. Save versus update and exit. Well, what's the difference? If I save a ticket, it will update anything that I've done to the ticket and leave me in the screen where this ticket is located. If I update and exit, it will update, save the ticket, but it will take me out of this screen and return me to sort of my landing page. Let's go ahead and do that now. By clicking update and exit, you can see that it has now taken me to a dump of stuff. What is this? Well, this is what is referred to as an incident list view. The incident list view is a list of all active incidents, sorted by default of newest to oldest in regards to the opened field. As I just made this ticket, that is why it's displayed. We'll talk a little bit in a moment about why that's red and all these aren't red. If I click on the incident number, it will return me to the ticket. The problem is, if I navigate too far away, I may have difficulty finding this ticket. If I click this back arrow, you can see that it takes me back here. But what might happen is that if another ticket were to be created, opened, they're one and the same, then suddenly mine might be the 2nd, the 5th, the 10th. On a Monday morning when everyone is showing up to work and asking a bunch of questions, this ticket may fall off the first page of 100 tickets within maybe an hour, maybe 2. So just be mindful of that. Priority is helpful for critical and high issues. All critical issues are highlighted in red. All high issues, which there aren't currently any listed here, are highlighted in orange. I'll show you real quick what that might look like, just so you have it for your examples. So now it goes from red to orange. You can see that what I should have done rather than clicking save was hit update and exit to return to this field with one less mouse click. Horse a habit. Okay, so what is this screen and why is it helpful? This is helpful because this is what is referred to as a breadcrumb. A breadcrumb tells you a little bit about how a ticket operates. We will talk in a moment about what breadcrumbs are, but keep in mind that ServiceNow is essentially an aggregate of filters, permissions, and displaying other applications. There are hundreds of users that use the tool in a variety of ways beyond just you and your peers in the role of the service desk. So we will come back to what filters are. Let's first circle back to that home page. To get back to the home page, click the UC Davis in the upper left-hand corner. We'll also bring you to my current home page, and I will walk you through how we got there. So this is my home page, and you can see that I have a lot more perhaps relevant information. I also have some additional color codes that we did not previously talk about. The first is you can see that I have green, blue, red, and this what looks like WIP, but it actually says VIP or VIP. Very important person. I think everyone knows that acronym, but just in case. So let's first start with the green. Here's where the due date is helpful. In this case, this ticket, Stavros, with a short description of MATLAB, we have an appointment with him tomorrow, November 5th, at 11:30 a.m. Now, what are we going to do? My guess is it's something related to MATLAB. This is where it's helpful to know the person, the location, and the issue. We'll click into that ticket in a moment. In this case, Steve Pig, TV monitor in Kemper Lobby, you can see is in red. We were supposed to do something on November 2nd at 11:55 a.m. Now, did we do it? Hard to say. We would need to go into the ticket to see specifically why this is in the past. Here's the problem. Let's say, for the purposes of this discussion, it's 11:29. There will be no other indication that you have something going in 1 minute other than that this will go from green to red. That's it. So it's important to be mindful of the due date field and never kind of let it get behind you. The blue field. The blue field on the incident ticket number indicates that the customer has responded to this ticket since the last time you performed an action on it. And in this case, these tickets are blue for me because it is assigned to me. So this is a quick and easy way for me to know that since I asked Amy a question about Visio, she has replied, and I have not followed up on that yet. In the same way with Matt Bishop, he has replied with a question, and I have not followed up. For the VIP flag, if we click this ticket, Carrie is a VIP for the College of Engineering. Her caller field also shows up in red text. It is always red, her name. This is helpful as the college has a variety of individuals who are, to put it bluntly, more important than other people. Now, some of that is because they're the dean or an assistant dean, or in Carrie's case, she is the executive assistant to the dean. And thus, if she needs something and she needs it immediately, her ticket is far more important than Jason Fearing's ticket. So it's just important to be mindful of that if you ever see a VIP flag. The assigned to are various people within the group, and then the state. We'll talk about the state when we go back into our ticket. So, the state of a ticket. When you first create a ticket, it is new. When you begin working on a ticket, it is work in progress. When you ask the customer a question and you're awaiting a response from them, it is awaiting user info. When you are awaiting something that is not the customer, perhaps you've ordered a part or you've involved a third party, you would set this to awaiting third party. And lastly, when you resolve a ticket, you set the state to resolve and you get what is called a resolution code. We're not going to look at resolution codes right now. Instead, we're going to focus on states. Typically, the majority of tickets are either work in progress or awaiting user info. You see, with awaiting user info, there is an auto reminder checkbox below the state field. In checking this box and saving this ticket, what happens is that an email reminder is automatically sent to the customer every other day for 7 days. So for example, if we make a ticket today is the 4th, on the 6th, it will send an email reminder at 2 p.m. saying, hey, we haven't heard from you. You got anything for me? It will then send another one on the 8th. Hey, you got anything for me? We haven't heard from you. And then lastly, it will send a third and final one on the 10th. Hey, we haven't heard from you. You got anything? On the 11th, it will automatically close and resolve the ticket at 2 p.m. All tickets, when awaiting user info auto reminder is selected, will automatically close after 7 days from when the ticket is first created or the last time a correspondence from the customer occurs. I don't expect anyone to remember these timelines. Part of the reason that I know this stuff off the top of my head is I wrote all this training back in 2013. So I've talked about these things many, many, many times for the last 5.5 years. That being said, it is important when using the awaiting user info that you appropriately evaluate the auto reminder functionality. Sometimes faculty, staff, or even students might get upset or frustrated by the notification. You would not want to have them ping, hey, I'm waiting on something from you, if in reality you're not. That's the fastest way to have them probably not respond in a positive way, or worse, give you a bad survey. And yes, there are surveys for every single ticket created by ServiceNow. So, Work in progress, you're working on it. Awaiting user info, you're waiting on them. Awaiting third party, you're waiting on someone who is not you and is also not the customer. Let's go ahead and save this ticket. Okay, so we have determined that we are unable to resolve this ticket for the customer. We ultimately need to transfer it to another group, another person, another place. Let's say, for example, we know that Jason Fearing is in the dean's office. Now, how would I know that? I would have no way of knowing that based on the information that is displayed here. This is the tricky part about training new hires and new staff for the service desk. I have worked at the university for the last 9 years, and I have worked in the College of Engineering for the last 9 months. I don't know every single person. I know a lot of people, but not every single one. Sometimes you have to do a little research beyond who is this person. Now, in this case, you might need to look up the people directory, or you might need to ask me, or you might need to ask one of your coworkers. A lot of the staff that have been at the service desk for a while might recognize a name like, oh yeah, he's a computer science professor. I took his class last quarter. Or, oh yeah, he's an ECE professor. I'm in his class right now. Something along those lines. When in doubt, ask me. And me being Jason Fearing. The reason why is if you transfer it to the wrong assignment group, the departmental tech who gets the ticket is going to say, what am I supposed to do with this? So how to transfer a ticket? You would transfer a ticket by choosing the appropriate destination group. Let's just say this ultimately needs to go to ECE. When I set the assignment group to ECE and save this ticket, what's going to happen is it's going to now move it out of my queue into the ECE queue and send an email notification to the departmental techs within ECE. So, what I would want to do is one of two things. The first, after setting the assignment group, is put something in the work notes. Now in this case, I know the departmental tech for ECE is a gentleman by the name of Phil Young. Now how do I know that? One, I know him. Second, if I go to the Assign To field and I click the magnifying glass, you can see that Philip Young is one of the people in these groups. I would not want to assign this ticket to Phil specifically, even though I want it to get to Phil. It needs to get to Phil, and even perhaps Phil is expecting it. Here's the reason why you don't want to assign it to Phil. If I set the Assign To field here, what will happen is that only Phil will get an email notification that a ticket has been assigned over, versus everyone else in that group. If I send it to the group and not a person, everyone in the group gets the notification. And in this case, what you didn't know is Phil is actually on vacation for the next week, and Michael is his backup. Had Michael not gotten that email, then he would have had no way of knowing, outside of maybe checking the queue, that you had assigned a ticket, and even worse, a high priority ticket for him to work. Hopefully that makes sense. So in this case, we'll leave it blank, and we'll put some work notes. Hi Phil, testing for ServiceNow training. Putting something in the work notes is helpful because in this case, it is possible that based on the information previously provided in the ticket, Phil would have no idea why you're sending them this ticket. The other thing that you may wish to do is put something in the additional comments field. The additional comments field is helpful for the purposes of communicating to the customer, hey, I'm sending your ticket over to Phil, or I'm sending your ticket over to the departmental tech, giving them some indication as to what you're doing, why you're doing it, and about how long it might take for them to get involved. It's important that you don't set any time standards. Hey, I'm going to send this over to Phil and he'll get back to you within the next 10 minutes. The reason why you don't want to do that is, unless you specifically know that Phil's going to get to it in the next 10 minutes, you don't want to be on the hook for promising something that you can't deliver on. So just be mindful of that. Let's save this ticket. Now typically when you hand it off to another group, there really isn't any reason to save it. You can update and exit and proceed to the next ticket. However, I wanted to just show you kind of what happens here. You can see the the priority and urgency has evolved, so that got a line item. We removed me as the assigned to and changed the assignment group, so that got added. And then, in a minute or two, there will be an entry for the email notification sent to the ECE people. Every 120 seconds, a cron job, for lack of a better term, runs in ServiceNow and processes all the pending additional comments waiting to go out to customers. There is nothing that you need to do to make that happen. It happens auto-magically every 120 seconds. So an email will take up to 2 minutes to ship out. Sometimes it happens instantly because you catch it right at the start of a cycle. Sometimes it takes almost the full 2 minutes because you catch it on the back end of a cycle. So I'm going to just reload this form a couple of times, and hopefully that we will get to the point where we can see that it actually went out. This is a classic example of where I caught it kind of right on the tail end of a previous mail cycle, so now I have to wait, of course, as I'm trying to do training, the full 2 minutes. Okay, we will come back to this. The resolve incident button. When the time comes for you to resolve a ticket, it's one of two ways. You can click resolve incident and it will just close it out. Now that's not very clean. The reason why that's not very clean is there is no communication sent to the customer. What I would recommend that you do, and unfortunately when you do this you have to put something here to make it come back alive. Otherwise you'll get a prompt saying, hey, you have to put something in the additional comments. So stand by here. Okay. I prefer the method of changing the state from, let's say, work in progress to resolved. The reason for that is you'll have to set a resolution code. Now, the resolution codes can be a little scary. There are a lot of choices. Some of them make no sense. Some of them make perfect sense. You see you have solved on site, solved remotely, not solved, resolved by caller, duplicate, a lot of choices here. Don't get too hung up on this. None of the reports that I actively run, I'm hung up on what you've entered here. However, it is helpful to get some information about specifically what was entered. And the reason why that's helpful is sometimes it's good to know the difference between solved on site and solved remotely. Because if you went to the customer's location, sat at their desk and resolved it versus you resolved it via email, that's a helpful metric for me to have. What's important is that you choose what you believe to be the most applicable to the specific incident. If it is not a duplicate, don't select duplicate. If it is no response, well then select no response instead of resolved by caller. I hope that makes sense. Again, do not get too hung up on which one you selected. Most incidents usually present themselves in such a way where it will be very obvious or fairly obvious on a appropriate resolution code. For the purposes of this, we'll just say that I solved it on site and I solved it permanently versus with a workaround. Workaround implies that the thing that I did, well, isn't exactly the final solution, but it's what we're going to go with for right now. Whereas if I resolved it permanently, that's the final solution. We're all set, done, shipped it, completed. Let's reload this and see if we get some additional information. Let's save the ticket because we've changed some stuff. You can see where ServiceNow kind of barks at you if you've done something and then you do something out of sequence. So here is an example of the email that was sent to the customer when the issue was resolved. This is where that's not clean. you would want to send some sort of correspondence to the customer when you resolve the ticket. Put something in the additional comments along the lines of what you did, what you talked about, what you recommended, why you recommended it. I'll leave it up to you in your best judgment. But just saying done, fixed, solved, that's not helpful. Especially if someday we look back on this ticket of, well, what did Jason do on that particular day for that person? Because it turns out that the issue has either come back or the issue is now impacting one of their coworkers or someone else. And now you're trying to figure out what did I do? How did I do it? Because you need to reproduce it. So just be mindful of that. The other thing is the survey that we talked about. You can see here that there's a survey. And if we bring this up, the survey works like you would think it would, in that there are some categories, 1 out of 5 stars, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. We want to strive for all of our surveys to have a 4 out of 5 on all of these categories. So that's what the survey looks like, that when you resolve it, your customer has the opportunity to tell us what he or she really thinks about the job that you did. Okay. So that is creating, working, transferring, and resolving a ticket. I've hit you with a lot of stuff, but I'm not done. So that's the bad news. Okay, let's go back to our queue. Looking at this queue, you can see that these are tickets that are active in the service desk. And I bet one of these I can resolve. One of these that I can resolve is the TV monitors in Kemper Lobby for Steve Pig. Now in this case, I know that this ticket has been completed because I was involved with overseeing it. So here I'm going to mark myself as the assigned to, and I'm going to say Steve. But you also notice that this other person, and in this case, this is Aditi Rizbud Bartle, I believe. I've probably mispronounced her last name. Aditi, if you ever see this, I'm sorry. I know her first name is Aditi. Sometimes I just can't type. Okay. So in this case, I know that this ticket has been done. We can resolve it out. I'm going to send some basic correspondence to the customer. I'm going to change it from work in progress to resolved. I'm going to set the resolution code to solved on site permanently. And the configuration item, let's see if we got anything with like TVs. Nope. Maybe display. Nope. So let's go Z with this. So you can see this is a classic example of you're trying to find the right configuration item and you just don't know what it is. Media and events seems applicable-ish. Okay. Looks good here. We're all set. And I know a little bit about how it was. TV monitor has a Mac Mini, powering it in kiosk mode. And I'm going to resolve this ticket. So now, Steve and Aditi get an email, and we're done. Here's something that you didn't see on the screen, right here. COE IT service desk with a phone number, URL, some Service Hub information, and our hours. Now, I didn't type any of that into the ticket. Well, how did it get there? That is what is called a mail signature. You're probably familiar with that. So that brings us to the next thing I'd like to cover, setting a mail signature. To set a mail signature, you'll click on your name in the upper bar here, where it says User Menu, and you'll go to Profile. The first thing you'll do is you'll want to include a signature. You'll check that box, and then you'll enter in a signature. It's a basic WYSIWYG editor, and I ask all of you to fill this out exactly as you see it. COE IT Service Desk, 530-784-4876, COEIT help at ucdavis.edu/http://servicehub.ucdavis.edu. Our hours Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. I know what you're thinking. We are not open just 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. For those of you that are here till midnight, you know very well that that is a false statement. However, we also have more constrained and limited resources after 5. So I tell people that we are available to service their needs 8 to 5, and the stuff that happens after hours, well, we hope that we can get to. But I don't want to put us on the hook in case someone at 11:50 wants to know why they haven't gotten a response to a ticket. When you're done with your signature, click Save, and that commits it. If you have any questions about getting your signature set up, let me know. Okay, so now I just resolved one of those tickets. Great. So what you would typically do on a normal workday is then work the next ticket, usually going from oldest to newest, working through them, figuring out what needs to be done, choosing the appropriate group, the appropriate person, determining you need to go on site, asking any questions they might have, and then working tickets from there. The last thing we're going to talk about is filters. I'll cover filters probably more specifically with each one of you as we go in and set it up. Filters can be a little scary the first couple of times, but essentially a filter is as follows. Go to incident. We'll do incident open. I think that's a little easier. A filter is exactly what it says it is, a breadcrumb. And we talked a little bit about this earlier. So how does a breadcrumb work? Show me all tickets that are active. There are 9,370 of them. For those of you that are familiar with and/or statements or if-then statements, this is how this process kind of works. So show me all active tickets with an assignment group of the COE service desk, which helps to be, okay, we went from 9,370 to 153. A filter is exactly like it sounds with the purposes of filtering information to go from more to less, or a funnel perhaps. It's actually kind of why, if you look at it, it looks like a funnel. You're getting smaller and smaller and more specific with the particular request. Okay, well, let's take this to the next level. Let's say I don't want to see any of the resolved tickets. There's 2 ways to do this. The first, go back to this and click another and. The other way to do it is to right-click on resolved, and now you see filter out. So let's do that. Let's click filter out. Okay, so now we went from 170 to 37. We've gotten even more narrow by scope, and it pre-populated what I would have typed in. Okay. All right, well, I only want to see new ones. Okay. Show matching. And now we're down to 5. So we went from 9,000 tickets to 5. Okay, well, I only want to see service disruption. And now we're down to 2. And if we go back here, this is essentially telling us in real time what we've done. Showing active with an assignment group. The state is not resolved, but the state is new, and the category is service disruption. Now, some of this we could probably clean up a little bit. There's some is, not, and is that kind of cancel each other out. So what we could do here is this, and I bet we get the same thing. Yeah. So that you can see by right-clicking, sometimes it over sciences itself. I can name that tune in 4 notes. You can name it in 6, but we both get the same tune. So that's what we've done there. Okay. Well, you've just made this great filter, right? And let's say that you would have to summon this filter up at a future point in time. You'll click save, you'll give it a name, and then you'll save it. So let's say training service disruption. I'm going to call it that, and I'm going to save it. Okay? Now, if I go back here to all, which is even worse, we'll see a much higher number. We're at 628,000, well over 500,000 tickets. I can bring that filter up very quickly. If I right-click on this 3-bar, or the hamburger as I've called it, right-click, filters, and now you can see all of the quick filters that I've created. And training service disruption is one of them. If I click that, it recalls and publishes that filter with those 2 choices instantly. There are other filters that are helpful. We'll look at those briefly, and then we'll conclude here with our sort of ServiceNow overview. The first is show me all the active tickets in the COE inbox. You'll want that. Show me all of the tickets in the COE service desk, regardless of who owns them, and you'll want that. Those, I think, are the 2 basic filters, and I'll walk each of you through how to add that when we go through your training and initial setup on your first day and your first shift. Well, that was an hour and 1 minute of me talking straight. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate your attention. Please feel free to rewatch this video, pause, write questions you have, ask me once you're done watching them to make sure you understand the basic overview of how ServiceNow works. I believe that I've covered the majority of what you need to do and what you need to know to be successful in creating, transferring, and resolving a ticket, but ultimately you'll find that using the tool and getting the hang of it yourself through process and repetition will make this a very quick study, and you'll be on your way to using ServiceNow without any questions within a couple weeks' time. Thanks very much for watching. Have a good day.